All right, guys, we are live. We have Carol Baskin here today. Carol, tell us what you've been doing with the big cat rescues.
Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. I'm so happy to be here on my first Telegram conference or whatever you call these things. This is so cool. I didn't even know you could do this with Telegram, so thank you for having me. At Big Cat Rescue, our main mission is a world where all wildcats live free. And so for many, many years, I've been working toward that end. And of course, that's why I became so hated by the people who want to breed animals and keep them in cages. And so we have been trying from the very beginning to find ways that we can protect big cats in the wild and stop the breeding of them for life in cages. And so that's led us down a lot of paths. I throw a lot of stuff at the wall to see what sticks. Back in 2003, we were using artificial intelligence with something called SitePal that would automate little speaking characters on our website to answer people's questions with real information that we had programmed into them about saving cats in the wild and why you shouldn't ever pay to see a cub on display or pet a cub. And that led us through the years to all different kinds of platforms and things that we've tried in an effort to save these big cats.
Excellent. So, I have some written down questions here, but just based on what you just said, you used artificial intelligence. In what capacity was that exactly? Like, how did that work out for you guys?
It was originally called Oddcast, and then it was called SitePal. And so what you could do was there were these little automated characters that you could choose from, and you could embed them on your website. And our website back then, this was back in 2003, was getting somewhere around 3 million visitors a year at bigcatrescue.org. And so, and actually, yeah, we changed our name in 2003, but so what I wanted people to do was when they came to this website, I wanted them to be able to ask any question that they would think of, all the questions people always asked me when they came out on a tour about the cats, and get an answer immediately. And so, now you can do that with chat bots and all kinds of things, but those weren't available back then. And so this was where you could take the character, type in the text of what the questions were that people would ask and the keywords that they would ask, and have it trigger the answers from these automated characters that would talk back to them.
Interesting. And when did you get into cat conservation exactly?
I had been saving bobcats since I was 17, so that was back in the 70s. And these were cats who had either been hit by cars or shot by hunters. And because they were born in the wild, it's legal if they get injured to fix them up and put them back in the wild. That's not true of any animal, any wild cat that's born in a cage. It's not legal to release any of the cats who are actually born in captivity. But from the time that I was 17, I was working to save bobcats and get them back out into the wild. And we still do that. In fact, right now, Big Cat Rescue is live over on Facebook as one of our bobcats is being relocated. She was, poor thing, she had been hit by a car, apparently survived it, but then was hit again because there were 2 breaks in her arm that were different times apart. And then because she couldn't hunt any longer, she ended up being shot for going after a guy's chickens. And so they called us and asked us to rescue her, and we did. But she ended up having to lose her arm because it was so badly damaged and there was no way to save it. And then she lost all of her canines because she had been hit in the face by the car. So she's never going to be able to be set free, and we'll give her a permanent home. And her name is Val. She's so valiant. And so she just now made it out of the hospital and into one of our outdoor enclosures, which is about 3,000 square feet.
So when you say a permanent home, is she living with other cats or is she isolated?
Wildcats are solitary by nature. They don't want to share space. So each of our cats has their own enclosure, and our very smallest enclosure for a 20-pound bobcat is 1,200 square feet, and most of those are 2 or 3 times that size. There's a couple of our cats who actually live with a mate. They're fixed so that they don't have kittens, but it's really rare for a cat to want to share space.
No, we have bobcats where I'm from in Arizona, and they are never together, and they're never very happy, to be honest. But that's a different experience.
Arizona has some beautiful bobcats. Oh, your guys are so much bigger than ours and spotted and fluffy.
I remember looking up when I was about 10 years old and seeing one in a tree right next to me and just freaking out. They are way bigger than you assume.
Well, they sound a lot bigger than they look, too.
Also true. We have pumas, too. We had a mountain lion that was stalking my high school campus when I was about 15.
That's always exciting.
It definitely made for some good conversation. All right, let's jump to the questions that Hoppy has prepared for us here today. Always thank you, Hoppy. So let's see. So you got to remember we're primarily a crypto community. That's why we're very interested in your NFT side of things. So two of these questions are going to be geared towards the crypto side of things. And then we move on to Big Cat Rescue. So first off, when did you first get into cryptocurrencies? And have you bought a coin?
The first cryptocurrencies that I bought were in 2018. And the reason I did that was because I had heard of CryptoKitties, and I just had to have that. That was just the coolest thing ever. So I bought some crypto. I set up my MetaMask wallet. I bought my first CryptoKitty, and I immediately lost my seed phrase. And I didn't find it again until April of 2021. And when I finally found it, my crypto had increased in value. And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I can buy another CryptoKitty. So I bought another CryptoKitty and bred them, and then started creating my own NFTs and selling them. And so the very first NFT that I created, I sold for nearly $1,000. And I thought, this is absolutely amazing. This is a great way to raise money for the cats, and a great way to reach a community that may not know anything about saving big cats. So I was really excited in 2021 to get my seed phrase back.
Yeah, losing a seed phrase is never fun. CryptoKitties were on Ethereum, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Those are some of the OG NFTs there. All right. Okay, let's see here. Next question is, who makes the artwork for your Ethereum NFTs for Big Cat Rescue?
It depends on which project you're talking about. So the first one that I created myself was actually a photograph that my daughter and I both do a lot of Adobe Photoshop with our photos to do artwork with them. And so the first one was one I think that I had done. And then there was a few more that I used her artwork for. And then there's been a number of different projects. So the one that's on for Sell app, that was something where a company reached out to me and said, hey, we'd love to create NFTs for you. And they made these very pixelated looking cats. I really didn't understand the reason for making something so pixelated, but I guess it was a play on the CryptoPunks look. And so they had created that whole series for us, and we had provided things like unlockables, which would be the cats roaring, or adoption kits for the cats based at different levels. And then there have been other groups that we've worked with where it was entirely their project, but they had reached out to us because they either had sold out and they were wanting to give back to the namesakes for the kinds of creatures that they were creating. They were doing big cats, and so they wanted to give to an organization that was saving big cats and chose Big Cat Rescue. And then there's some who hadn't quite sold out yet and reached out to us and asked if we would be involved with them. And so there's just been every possible combination, I think, of artist and artwork and projects that we've been involved with.
Very interesting. All right, so those are the questions from Hoppycat. Now we're going to move on to from your Michi. Forgive me, I don't know how to pronounce that. How did you get to deal with big cats for the first time? As we know, they are wild and dangerous.
My first experience with a wildcat was because I spent so much time in veterinary offices that when a bobcat got hit by a car, the vet can fix them up in 30 minutes, maybe an hour, but it takes months of rehab. And they knew that I loved cats. I was working with feral cats, and they knew that I would deal with the cat that was really vicious and wanted to tear my face off. And so they'd ask me, would you take this cat home, give it a place where it can heal and get stronger, and then just release it? And so I started doing that when I was 17. And like I said earlier, I'm still doing that today. My daughter is our primary rehabber now, but we both go out on Bobcat calls all the time. And then that led us to, when I was in my 30s, rescuing a bobcat who was being sold at an auction to a taxidermist. And he said he was going to club her in the head in the parking lot and make a den decoration out of her. And so I started crying, and my husband started bidding, and we brought her home. But she was born in captivity, so it wasn't legal to release her. And they had declawed her, trying to make a pet out of her prior to selling her at the auction, because they never work out as pets. And so there was no way she could hunt or survive, even if it had been legal to release her. So she was as wretched a pet as you might expect. And my husband started calling around trying to find somebody that she could grow up with, because she was beating the snot out of our German Shepherd and scaring my daughter half to death. And so he called around, and this guy said, well, I'll sell you a kitten, but you have to drive here in person. And so we drove up to La Center, Minnesota, and it turned out to be a fur farm. And there were 56 bobcats and lynx that they were going to kill the next year for their fur. And so we came home with all 56. And like they say, if you build it, they will come. And so we ended up buying out every fur farm in the United States that had big cats, with the agreement that they never kill cats again for their fur. And then people started calling and asking, would you take my lion? Would you take my tiger? And I naively thought back in the 90s that I could fix this. I could rescue our way out of this. And that turned out not to be true, because the people who make their money, the people you saw in Tiger King who make their money charging people to have their picture made with a cub or to walk a tiger on a leash, those people are breeding hundreds of tigers every year and then dumping them as soon as they're 12 to 16 weeks old, because they're too hard to handle at that point. They can take a finger off a child. So I realized the only way I was going to fix this problem was by changing the laws so that people couldn't get their hands on these animals to begin with, which is why the exploiters hate me so much.
Carol, I have so many questions. And like, as I told you in our Zoom call, I didn't see Tiger King, so I'm a little bit of a default here. But where does this primarily happen? Is this happening in the United States?
The United States and South Africa are the two worst areas when it comes to people paying to have their picture made with cubs. So in the United States, it's typically done, well, back in 2011, there were about 56 of these people who were just tiger mills, like a puppy mill, just constantly breeding hundreds and hundreds of lions and tigers for people to pose with and have their picture made with. But like I said, once they get to be 12 to 16 weeks old, then they can take a finger off a child, and they end up becoming a liability that costs us over $10,000 per year per cat, just in food and vet care, not any of the overhead of the sanctuary. So they dump them and give them to anybody who will take them, which are usually, people living in trailer parks that haven't got any clue as to what this animal's going to grow up to be. In Africa or South Africa, the big ploy that they play on tourists is to say that these are orphans. And so they charge people to come over there and feed the orphans. And then they send them to another camp where people are charged to go and pet or go and walk tigers in the wild or lions in the wild. And they call it Walk with Lions. And then they can use them until they're, 6 months to maybe 12 months old there. And then they send them off to these canned hunts where people pay to shoot the tiger or a lion in a cage and keep it as a trophy. So throughout the animal's entire life, it's being exploited and abused and then killed in the end. And so the environmental minister in South Africa just last year said that they're putting an end to that, which is great. The U.S. has still not put an end to it, and we have a federal bill before Congress right now that would, and we have over 300 co-sponsors, so we have over a majority in the House, and we're working on getting a majority in the Senate with the intent of finally getting this bill passed this year.
So when you say you're getting a bill passed to stop it, that implies some sort of current legality. This is legal?
Unfortunately, it is legal, and there are 4 states in this country that have no laws whatsoever. So what happens is when you have these holes where things like this can happen, then they end up discarding them into states where they have tried to ban this activity. But you don't find out about it until there's a cat running loose. So like in Dallas last year, there were 7 tigers that were running loose in different situations, different times in the past year, because nobody even knew they were there until they managed to escape.
Wow. You learn something new every day. That's really crazy. I did not know we had a cat problem in this country. That is quite surprising. All right, let's jump back to the canned questions here that we approved. Give me just one moment. Okay. So, based on media perception, how do you respond to people's assessment of how you manage a big cat rescue and it being no different from a zoo? So, I guess the better way for me to phrase this would be, what is different between big cat rescue and a zoo?
Yeah, if you didn't see Tiger King, you didn't see how hard the producers worked to try and make it look like Big Cat Rescue was no different than these horrible exploiters of big cats, which was such a travesty to the entire sanctuary community. So the whole difference between zoos, which are breeding these cats for life in cages, and sanctuaries is that zoos are in the business of buying, breeding, selling, and in some cases, allowing public contact with the cats. Sanctuaries, by definition, cannot be sanctuaries if they buy, breed, sell, or allow contact with the cats. So philosophically, we are at opposite ends of the spectrum. And I am just shocked at how many people watched Tiger King and did not even 5 minutes of investigation on their own to find out that Big Cat Rescue is nothing like a zoo. We have never bred lions or tigers, and we're the leading sanctuary in trying to end the problem. And yet they believed the narrative that they heard in Tiger King, which was this guy who was sent to prison for allegedly hiring two different hitmen to kill me and for walking up to five healthy tigers and shooting him in the head. But because he said that I'm no different than his place, everybody wanted to believe it.
Carol, I gotta watch this TV show. All right. This is
Well, if you watch it, be sure to watch Tiger King season 2, because Tiger King left everybody believing that I was some kind of gold digging, home wrecking murderer. And yet, Tiger King 2, which apparently nobody has seen, actually produced a document by Homeland Security saying that Don Lewis was alive and well in Costa Rica 5 years after I last saw him.
interesting. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, the amount of DMs I'm getting right now is kind of outrageous. So I'm gonna watch this and do my own research. Let's get some more questions going here. All right. Oh, I like this one. Why did you choose NFTs or cryptocurrency as a way to donate to Big Cat Rescue?
I think there's a whole community of people out there who are making a lot of money in NFTs. It's
All
like the
right.
hot new thing, and everybody's involved in it. And yet we all have to pay taxes. And I know a lot of people are really hoping that cryptocurrency means they don't have to pay taxes, but guess what? You're going to have to pay taxes. And you
We
have
were
the
all
choice when
praying
it
for
comes.
that, yes.
You have the choice of where your profits go to. You can donate them to a sanctuary or to a charity of your choosing, or you can pay it to the government. And I think if people knew there were charities out there that are doing good work, like Big Cat Rescue, that they could donate their proceeds to, that they'd much rather do that than have it be wasted on government excess. So that's why I wanted to reach out to that community and let them know that we're here, and they should also check the Charity Navigator as the way of sussing out who a good charity is. Just because a charity has a great website does not mean that they're doing great work. And so you really need to look to the watchdogs who are looking at their 990s, that are going through their audited statements, who are making sure they have legitimate board members in place, and that they're actually doing the things that they say they're doing. Those are the charities that should be benefiting from this huge windfall.
That is a very good point, by the way, is we can give charitably as opposed to paying our taxes, and that to a large extent. And I like that. I don't like my taxes very much. Okay. Next. Oh, this is a good one. This comes from Crypto King 2022. Dave, do you have any plans to integrate the Big Cat Rescue into its own blockchain project? You clearly see the advantages of cryptocurrency. Why not move into it entirely and bring out more NFTs for the supporters?
My primary mission isn't to support Big Cat Rescue, even though I have to do that, and I have to raise between $3.5 and $4 million every year to take care of the cats I have. My main mission is to get people interested in this space with the hopes of saving these cats in the wild. So the link that you have up there, bigcatrescue.org/earth, that's my vision for the future. Everybody wants to see lions and tigers and leopards and jaguars and bobcats and all these amazing animals, but none of them belong in cages. So how can we monetize those cats in the wild in such a way that ensures their preservation forever and gives us all we want, which is to have that up close personal experience with the cats doing what they do in the wild. And so I've been really involved in creating immersive video. We create a new immersive video every single week of our cats that you can see in our headsets. You can see it on a tablet or a computer, but it's just not the same as actually putting on the headset and feeling like that cat is like 2 inches from your face. And so imagine if we were able to put 360-degree internet streaming cameras in the wild where these cats live, in their favorite places, at their favorite watering hole, at their favorite hunting sites, in their den sites where they're raising their cubs. And those cameras are then tied to a blockchain subscription fee, just like you would pay to Netflix. And yet the lion's share of that money goes directly into the crypto wallets of the people, the poorest people on our planet, who live right next to lions and tigers and leopards and jaguars. And all they have to do to keep that money coming in is make sure that those forests are kept intact, that they're not being burned down or cut down for agriculture, and that those animals are protected from poaching. That makes everybody in that area a game warden, and we all benefit from it. People say that they take their children to the zoo to teach them about animals, but they're not learning a thing about how those animals really are in the wild when they see how we have held them hostage against their will in a cage. It's about the worst message we could teach a child. But imagine if any child can put on their headset and see these animals in the wild doing what they're doing in real time. That's educational. And maybe not everybody can afford a $500 Oculus Quest, but they could go to the zoo, and the zoo could make that an even more immersive experience if they didn't have big cats in cages, but rather turned all of those. They have great locations, right? They're in these huge cities. They've got all these patrons. They turn those into immersive situations where not only are you seeing a snow leopard in the Himalayan mountains, but they're blowing cold air on you and you're smelling that yak stew next door that the monks have in their tent. You're feeling like you're right there with the animal. That is how zoos are going to have to remake themselves, because I think today's children just do not want to see animals in cages, and rightfully so.
You know, I've seen something immersive like that done at like Disneyland or something along those lines, but I never once thought about it using it for conservation. Very interesting.
I think it's the future. And that's where that's the whole thing with the NFTs and the crypto and everything that I'm involved with now. It's in an effort to try and inspire somebody who has much deeper pockets and much more creativity than I have to actually make that happen. I don't need to be a part of it. I just want to see it happen.
I'm happy to be having this conversation, Carol. Very interesting. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, do you plan on expanding Big Cat Rescue to maybe have locations across the world where cats are still facing these sort of injustices?
I don't think it's going to be necessary, because I really believe that as the U.S. finally clamps down on this cub petting, and I mentioned earlier there were about 56 of those cub petters in 2011. Now there's only about 5 or 6 of them, and you saw all of them. Well, you didn't, but everybody else saw them in Tiger King. So there are a bunch of bad actors who are in a lot of trouble. Most of them are with the law already, and some of them have already lost all of their animals. They've ended up in decent sanctuaries, thankfully. But as all of these horrible places end and people understand how egregious it is that we are holding these wildcats captive, then they're going to demand these alternatives that are saving them in the wild. So we won't need more sanctuaries to rescue animals from horrible situations. We'll just not have horrible situations in the first place.
It's a very much longer term vision there. All right. Are you open to partnering with any other big cat rescue sanctuaries or anyone in that field?
Big Cat Rescue is part of the Big Cat Sanctuary Alliance. We're accredited by the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries, and the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries accredits the top of the line sanctuaries all around the world. There's probably, I'd say maybe a dozen of us in the United States who take care of big cats because they're really expensive and really hard to contain, as you might imagine. But we all work together. And then the Big Cat Sanctuary Alliance is all of the people from the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries that work with big cats, and also the sanctuaries that are trying to get accredited, because our goal is to bring all of the sanctuaries that are really doing good work up to that higher standard. And sometimes all they need is help or financial help or instructions on, how to train their volunteers or things like that. So we all work together to try and make it better for the animals who can't be set free.
How expensive is it to take care of a cat? I got to ask.
Depends on the cat. And since COVID, oh my God, things have gone up. So I haven't really calculated this out. But before COVID, we estimated that for one tiger, it would cost us about $10,000 per year just for the food and the vet care, not any of the overhead of the sanctuary. But now the cost of meat, as everybody knows, has more than doubled. So that number's got to be a lot higher than when I first calculated it.
Wow. That is not like my cat. Okay.
And there is the understatement of the year.
You're not kidding. Like, that is I don't understand how people try to have these things in their houses. Like, that's a huge commitment and danger, but it's far more prevalent than I realized before this conversation.
And nobody ever keeps them past about 1.5 to 2 years old. Once they get to be that big, they're hundreds of pounds, they can kill you, and they start to become adults. And once they become adults, that's when they will kill you for space. Because in the wild, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, they're solitary. A tiger cub will grow up and kill its mother for her territory. And it's the same way when you raise them in your house. It will grow up to kill you for your territory. And so that's when people start trying to get rid of them as fast as they can.
Wow, a tiger will go after its own mother just to gain space.
It's survival of the fittest out there. And that's why the mother runs them off while they're still pretty young.
Wow, I never thought about that. Because, I remember, like, I grew up in the 90s. What were their name? Sigmund and Freud? Oh my God, that guy got attacked by a tiger, didn't he? That man got attacked by a tiger. There goes my example. Never mind. Tigers attack people, don't know. That's...
And I was like, that's a prime example of that cat becoming an adult.
Wow, yeah. All right. Let's see. I think I have 2 more questions for you here that Hoppy has been so great to write down for us. So I see there's a number of volunteer ways to get involved with Big Cat Rescue for people who aren't local to the organization's area. Do you mind sharing more info about that?
One of the easiest ways people can help us is if you shop on Amazon, which we all have been doing since COVID. One of the things you can do is go to smile.amazon.com and you can pick any charity. It doesn't have to be us. You can pick any charity to receive part of your spend. So every time that you spend money on Amazon after you sign up at smile.amazon.com, a portion of what you spend actually goes to that charity. And it doesn't come from you. It comes from Amazon. They don't charge you more for that. And so we've been able to get an awful lot of people to choose Big Cat Rescue because we are the highest rated sanctuary of our kind. If you go to Charity Navigator, you'll see we've had a 4-star rating from the inception. And we have had a numerical rating between 97 and 100 every year, which is just unheard of in charities. And so that's the easiest way people can help. If they go to bigcatrescue.org and type in volunteer, they should be able to find some page there that'll give all of the different ways that you can help out for free. But I think the biggest thing people can do is whenever you see somebody posting a picture of themselves holding a cub or walking a tiger on a leash or driving around in a Ferrari with a cheetah in the front seat, call them out on that, because they're never going to keep that animal as an adult. It's going to end up being dumped. And they're just doing it for the likes and the attention. And so that animal's whole life has been totally wrecked because that person wanted you to like them. If you don't like them, if you call them out for being the abusive bastards that they are, they're not going to do that anymore.
I like your attitude of going after the actual problem and not just masking it. My family's a few of my family members work for NGOs and things along those lines, and it's a huge problem. Like charity can just create a never-ending cycle if it's not done in the right way.
Yeah, that's so true. And, so many charities are unfortunately probably always going to have to exist because there's just no answer, no cure for what they're trying to do. But this is
Sure.
something we can all fix together. We can put an end to this abuse.
Before I jump back to the last question, I guess, how big of an issue right now is, I mean, just their environment being destroyed? Like these cats live in the jungles, correct?
Well, they live all across the world, everywhere except Australia,
I was
I
just
think.
thinking of a tiger. Fair. Yeah.
Well, yeah, tigers are in India and Siberia and Sumatra. But you're right, habitat destruction is a huge part of that, which is why these internet streaming cameras are, I think, the only answer to that. You can't tell people that they can't feed their family, that they can't burn down the forest and do agriculture that's unsustainable because they have to feed their family. So you have to give them a way that they can actually live the kind of lives that we all want to live while they're doing something good, like protecting those animals in the wild.
Makes sense. Yeah, that was a huge. My cousin did some work in Africa and hunting. Hunting actually supplies a huge amount of local revenue. So one of his projects to work on was to like do that in a sustainable way that didn't hurt the animal numbers, that actually worked with the villages in the area that they were hunting people things on. And it's kind of amazing what some planning can do. It actually brought animal numbers up over time because there were inherently people fighting against the poachers all of a sudden.
Yeah, and we've actually seen this work with big cats. So back in the 90s, my daughter was 12 when we first started the sanctuary, but back in the 90s, she said, we need to save the snow leopard and we need to sell these woolly mittens and hats and scarves at the end of an hour and a half tour in Florida where it's 90 degrees. And I was like, I don't know how we're going to sell this stuff, but we actually ended up being the second largest retailer for these snow leopard enterprises items. And thankfully, we taught them how to make things that people could actually use, like dog toys and stuff that we didn't have to worry about selling scarves. But the whole idea behind the snow leopard enterprises is that snow leopards were being killed for killing a yak or killing a llama, and that was the people's income. And so what snow leopard enterprises did was they said, we'll pay you 5 times what you can make with your items selling them in your local area by selling them through sanctuaries and zoos. And the only thing we want from you is that not one single snow leopard ends up dying on your watch. And so every single village became a huge group of game wardens to protect those animals because the money that they could make from selling their stuff through Big Cat Rescue and Woodland Park Zoo was so much more than what they could make any other way that of course they wanted to do that. And so we saw the only cats who have actually seen an increase in their numbers have been the snow leopards.
Interesting. Yeah, that is a very unorthodox way to solve that problem, as I guess the good ones are done that way. All right, I'm going to, if it's okay with you, Carol, unmute some pre-approved people that we have that would just like to say a few words to you. Snoop Lion, would you go ahead and raise your hand?
Hey, what's up, Carol Baskin? Yeah, I just want to pop in and say thank you for everything you've done. I'm a really big fan. In my living room, I have a poster of Justin Bieber, and then I have a poster of you, and then I have a poster of Barack Obama. Ever since I saw the Tiger King, my life kind of flipped upside down. I started going to a lot of zoos and wannabe sanctuaries all around the U.S., and I found that throughout all of them, the Big Cat Rescue is probably the only one worth going to. I've bought maybe 15-year NFTs, and I've sold them all for 10 to 20K, and I've used all that money for Big Cat Rescue. And I just want to pop in, say all that, and I guess that's pretty much it. I'm your biggest fan.
Wow, that is so cool. I love the name, of course, Snoop Lion. That is just hilarious. And thank you for being a supporter. I can attest to the fact that there are other decent sanctuaries, and you'll find them at sanctuaryfederation.org, but a lot of them are not open to the public, so that's probably why you never saw them.
How would you go to those if they're not open to the public?
Yeah, you just can't. One of the things that we have suggested, because it's been so beneficial to us, is to make themselves available online. So, like every day at Big Cat Rescue, we go live for about an hour. Brittany walks around. She takes questions from the audience. She goes out and sees the cats they want to see, checks in on everybody that people are asking about. And so it's a way that people can see the cats and know that they're doing okay and that we're treating them right without them actually being on site. And so we have really encouraged that a lot at these other sanctuaries that are closed to the public.
Awesome. All right, next up we have Crypto Corey. Corey, if you'd like to say a word. Corey, with the amount of times you DM me, I know you're going to jump in and say something right now, sir. Go ahead. You're on mute.
Just want to say from the UK, we all love you, Carol. Keep up the good work.
Oh, thank you so much. I have found that people in the UK were so much nicer after Tiger King, because back in the 70s, you guys outlawed most of the horrible things that we're still doing in the United States. And so, of course, everybody there is so much further along mentally as far as how these animals should be treated. Whereas most of the hate mail and hateful things that came from people here in the US.
Yeah, man. We're all with you over here, man. Keep it up. Keep it up.
Thank you, Corey.
Peace out.
Awesome. All right, Carol, if there's anything you'd like to close with or say finally, I'm going to end the recording in just a moment here.
For anybody who is in the US, the one big thing that you could do is go to bigcatact.com. When you type in your name and address, it knows who your member of Congress is, and it will create an email to them or a tweet, or you can actually call them. And I'd suggest that you do all three. And so if you're shy about calling your member of Congress because you've never talked to your member of Congress before, do it on a weekend or do it at night, and you'll just get an answering machine. And we give you a little script that just says, please ask your boss to co-sponsor the Big Cat Public Safety Act. And that is what we need to get this bill across the finish line this year. If you're not from the US, we have a page at catlaws.com where we have like circus alerts when there are circus acts that are out there that are abusing animals, or things that are going on in other countries where maybe you can weigh in on it.
Excellent. You can find all that information on the website?
Yes, on catlaws.com, which actually is just a short URL that'll take you back to our website. And then bigcatact.com for U.S. citizens.
Sounds great. All right, Carol, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to end the recording.